What's going on, guys? This is George with Afterlife Reptiles, and today I want to talk about 5 things that you should know before buying a ball python. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of you guys that bought a ball python did not think about before getting one. So let's jump into it. Here we go. All right, guys. So thing number 5 is ball pythons can be very addictive. So you might be going into the store thinking I'm only going to get one ball python, but you end up, maybe getting one ball python, but eventually you're gonna get another one, and then another one, and then another one. So if you end up getting a bunch of ball pythons, that is gonna cost you not only the price of the ball python itself, but the enclosure too. And believe me, if you wanna go with something nice, such as an aquarium or a terrarium like this one, they can get very, very pricey, very, very fast. So a ball python needs to be in an enclosure of about 40 gallons or more. 40 gallons is what you want to do the very least, so that if they reach a good size, um, they're gonna have plenty of space to grow into that enclosure. And this one right here, for example, was almost $200, you know, and I got it for pretty cheap, brand new. So that is $200 for an enclosure like this. This is not a ball python, by the way. And then you have your hide, then you have your water bowl, and obviously you want to put a bunch of different things to decorate their enclosure. You're talking about, depending on what you want to spend, all on the hide and the water bowl and the decorations, up to $100 or more. So now you're talking about $300 on top of the ball python. So like I said, if you get one, not a big deal. But like I said, a lot of times you see one ball python, um, you know, you get it, and then you see all the different crazy colors that ball pythons have, and you're gonna be like, oh my god, I want to get that one, and I want to get this one, and I want to get that one. You're more than, you're very likely to end up with a bunch of, well, maybe not a bunch of, but more than one ball python. And if you end up spending $300 every time you buy a ball python, you know it's gonna get pricey very fast. Um, if you go with a rack system like this that I have right here, this is an ARS, and this is a Freedom Breeder. These racks cost more than $1,000. And this one here, right here, for example, has 10 enclosures. This one over here has 20. And they can easily go $2,000-$3,000. Depending on how many enclosures you get and how big you get them. So that is a lot of money if you're thinking about getting more than one ball python. You need to think about getting something like this or something like that, or a PVC rack or something similar. All right, guys. So another thing that you want to consider before getting a ball python is, you know, if something was to happen to your ball python, do you have a veterinarian close by that specializes in snakes or ball pythons or reptiles? It is not that easy to find good vet that you trust with your snakes. They're just not around every corner like you have vets for dogs and cats. So you can't take your snake for the most part to a regular vet and expect them to know what to look for. So if you end up in a situation where you have to take your snake to the vet right away, and then you realize, oh man, I don't know, I don't know where to take my snake, and it's a real emergency. That can be very scary if you have no idea where to take them. Or what happened to me one time was that one of my snakes had a kind of like a ball. This one actually right here that's about to lay. She had like a little ball inside her mouth, what appeared to be pus, And what happened was, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then I started calling vet places all around the area. And for some reason, they all decided to go to some conference, and I couldn't find a vet. And, I was very scared of that actually rupturing and infecting more of the mouth of the snake. Um, and then what was I going to do? So it's a good idea to know at least of a few vets around the area that can take care of your animal right away in case you have an emergency. That way you already know where they are, who they are, and you don't have to be trying to investigate, on the run, where to take your snake, to hopefully never happens, but to save their life. All right, guys. Number 3, another thing that you need to consider before buying a ball python is ball pythons are not a what you will call a display animal. Ball pythons got their name because, as you probably already know, they like to ball up and pretty much hide their face, and that's how they like to be. Once they feel or see something that they're not, too happy about, or they don't know what it is, or they don't know what's going on, that's what they're gonna do, and it's gonna take them a while to come out of that, unless you go ahead and, of course, and start handling them. So a lot of people, I've seen this a lot, where people will go on the forums or the Facebook pages and they'll be like, "Oh my God, my ball python's always in the enclosure. It's not coming out. I don't know what's wrong with it." There's nothing wrong with it. That's the way that they are. So if you were thinking about getting a reptile that you're always gonna come home and you're gonna be able to see, just exploring their cage or moving around, ball pythons are not going to do that. Now, I've seen a lot of people also saying, "You know what? I changed the hide for my ball python. I completely removed it because I wanted to see it, or I changed the substrate and the substrate that he's in now, or the temperature or whatever, and now my ball python's all over the place. He's always exploring and he's so happy." That's probably not right. If a ball python is not, for the most part, hiding in their hide, there might be something wrong with their enclosure. And what they're actually trying to do is find that perfect spot for them to hide and just stay there, and not be bothered. So if you see your ball python all over the place all the time, that means that there's probably something wrong with their enclosure. Like Lucy here, for example, she's a reticulated python. So, and she's perfectly fine being in this type of cage. She's gonna, you're gonna be able to see her. She's gonna come out. She's gonna be very curious wherever she sees something. She's gonna try to explore right away, because she's gonna think that it's food. So they are very interactive, but that is not a ball python. So you need to consider that. If that's what you want to be able to have an animal that's always gonna interact with you, this is probably not the right snake for you. Now, there are some exceptions, of course. There are very friendly ball pythons that always come out and try to see what's going on every time that you go and look at them. But for the most part, that is not the case. Like this girl right here, she's for the most part very curious all the time. Let's see. Well, as you can see, she's at least not going to hide right now. She's very trusting, and I can do this type of stuff in front of her, and she usually doesn't care. But that's not the case for a lot of these guys. All right, guys, second one. And now we're getting to some very important stuff. Things that I think a lot of people, when they talk about it in their YouTube channels, don't say this, and they should. Or at least people that are looking at those channels, those videos, should consider. You hear all the time that, the humidity for a ball python should be kept between 40 and 60, 40 at the low, 60 at the high. And they will usually go ahead and recommend some kind of substrate for your ball python. Right here I have some Repti chip, which is cocoa chips. And you have all kinds of things like Floor. You have that actual one that is like dust, which is also made of cocoa. You have different types. You have aspen. You have different types of substrate. And the thing you need to keep in mind with that is your humidity is going to be different in every state. Your humidity is going to be different in every city. Your humidity is going to be different even in the different rooms of your house. So if you are in a room that does not have a lot of humidity, you're gonna want to go with something that is gonna stay wet for longer, and that's gonna keep a pretty high humidity because it's gonna dry out fast. But however, if you're in a room that has 70, 80, I've seen people that sometimes have like 90% humidity in the room and it's really hot and very uncomfortable, you're not gonna want to use something like this, because the way that you prepare this is with water. This comes compressed, and I'll show you right now. So this comes completely compressed like that in a block, and the way that you get it out of there is you put water in it, and then it expands, and then you have all of this bedding completely wet, humid, and it's gonna stay that for a really long time. Now, if you're in a room where you have 80 or 90 or 70% humidity as it is, and then you put this in your enclosure, you're gonna have 100% humidity for a very long time inside of the enclosure of your ball python. And what's gonna happen is that that can create some health issues for your snake. So in that case, you might want to go with something like aspen, because if you already have 80% humidity, aspen is not going to have any humidity in it. It's going to be dry, and the snake is going to be perfectly fine, because you already have the perfect humidity for them for the most part. Now, if anything, you might end up having to dehumidify the room that you're in order to achieve that perfect humidity for them. So you want to keep that in mind, because a lot of humidity can be very dangerous to your animal. It can cause respiratory infections. It can cause scale rot. It can cause other things. It can definitely make them very uncomfortable and very desperate, frustrated to get out of there to a drier place. And if they have no way of doing that, you're going to have a very stressed out snake. So that's another very important thing to consider. Don't go by what they say, oh, buy this and that's it. This is the best one I have. This is the best one for you and that's it. Do your research. Consider your state, your city, even the room that you have your snake in. All right, guys. So number one thing that you need to consider before getting a ball python. And this is one of the things that actually happened to me when I got my first ball python. So when I went to the store and I asked about them, obviously I asked, what do they eat, right? And, obviously they told me, well, they eat rats, they can eat mice. For the most part, I think that they told me they can eat rats, right? You give them rats. And, for most people are like, ugh, trying to feed them rats, that sounds kind of like dangerous or nasty or whatever. And to me, they gave me that option. They said, like, well, you can do frozen thawed. You just have to switch them if they're used to that live rat. I'm like, frozen thaw? What do you mean? Like, yeah, you just thaw out the rat, frozen rat, and get it hot, offer it to them, and, that's what they'll eat. Well, and I actually have some of them right here. These are frozen rats that I've produced myself here in this room. And this, you will basically thaw it out, put it in running water, and then offer it to them. And a lot of people might be more comfortable, feeding these, or thinking that they can feed this to their snake, and rather than feeding a live rat. So, a lot of people are not comfortable handling one of these. At the beginning, I was actually, nervous about handling one of these. I thought it was gonna bite me. Come to find out that rats are very, social, and they're actually not very aggressive if you breed them that way. But anyway, so consider this: just because you think, oh, you know what, I am going to just buy frozen rats and do that, your snake might be thinking different than you. Just because you have that option of doing frozen doesn't mean that they're gonna want frozen rats. Doesn't mean that they're gonna want live rats. Doesn't mean that they're gonna want rats at all. Some snakes can get stuck on mice. And the thing about, snakes that are stuck on mice, like this one right here that I just got, is mice compared to rats are pretty small. So if you're trying to get your females big and plump and ready for to have them breed for you, you're gonna have a really hard time trying to get them up to a good weight on mice alone, because mice, pretty much, this will be like the absolute biggest that a mice would get, like a wean rat would be. So if you can only do mice with one of them, you're gonna have a really hard time trying to get them up there. Like this girl right here, she won't take anything other than mice, and I got her knowing that, and knowing that I'm gonna have to switch her out to rats. So, and it can be a challenge. You're gonna have to do some very nasty stuff potentially to get them to switch to mice. So you have to consider that just because you're thinking, I'm just gonna do live, or I'm gonna do pre-kill, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that, you might actually end up having to do something completely different that you might not like. So you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared to handle rats, or kill them, possibly pre-kill them, or some people might think that having them in the fridge is disgusting or something like that. You might have to actually do that. So, babe, can you pass me a grown rat? So I'm gonna show you. You want this snake to basically get big, and in order to do that, you need something like this. This will be like the maximum size for a ball python right here. This will be for my big girl right here. So you want them to get from that to something like this size right here, and you're gonna have a very, very hard time trying to get your snake through these sizes with mice. So anyway, so there you have it, guys. Those are 5 things that I think a lot of people don't think about before getting a ball python, and you definitely need to consider. Because it can be a game changer. It might be, I think that ball pythons are amazing snakes. I think they're one of the best snakes out there, but it might not be for you. So let me know what you think. Be honest with me. Did you think about any of these things before you bought your ball python, or do you even think about these things before buying a ball python? If you're thinking about getting one, do you consider any of these things? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, and thank you guys for watching. See you next time.